Hey, what's up? My name is Jenny Ray, and I am living one step at a time, and welcome back to whatever the fuck this is. I don't know either, so keep on watching to find out. Nailed it. Like, share, subscribe. Today, I will be discussing the neurological conditions I was misdiagnosed with as a child. The original diagnosis of myasthenia gravis came at the age of 3.5. I was being treated by a research hospital. Personally, I have not decided whether or not I am going to use the names of the hospitals and the doctors that were involved in my care. Right now, I have chosen to keep their names to myself, but I still maintain the right to change my mind at any point in time in this process. Most of the information that you're going to hear regarding these neurological conditions will come directly from the National Institute of Health. Myasthenia gravis is the most impactful neurological condition that I was misdiagnosed with in the beginning, because that diagnosis led to numerous other misdiagnoses as well as other improper medication. Myasthenia gravis particularly, according to the National Institute of Health, is a chronic immune neuromuscular disease that causes weakness in the skeletal muscle that worsens after periods of activity and improves after periods of rest. It goes on to say that the cause of myasthenia gravis is due to an autoimmune disease, which means that the immune system that normally protects itself from foreign entities or outside objects improperly attacks its own inner system, ecosystem, if you will. What they used to treat myasthenia gravis with in my case was Mestinon. Mestinon is also known as pyridostigmine. That is the what is the word that I'm looking for? That is the parent company, or not, it's not parent company. That is the scientific name, and then Mestinon is the generic brand name. So the challenging part about Mestinon is, if you do not have myasthenia gravis and you are given Mestinon, neurological symptoms are created in you. So, according to the National Institute of Health, it is super challenging to distinguish between an overdose of Mestinon and myasthenia gravis itself, because they produce the same symptoms. And it's vital that you use scientific evidence to back up the fact that a person needs to be using Mestinon medically necessary, right? You have to have scientific evidence to make a medicine medically necessary, and you have to have reason. The only set of records that are missing in my entire medical portfolio, if you will, is the set of tests that prove that Mestinon is medically necessary, as well as the testing that shows that I actually had myasthenia gravis. Those records are missing. In my particular situation, I was unable to eat until the age of 4. I couldn't drink liquids until I was the age of 9. Well, I mean, I did, but I wasn't supposed to because I was sick. And I couldn't walk until the age of 11. I used to think it was 13, and then I sat down and did some math. 6th grade. Editing self here, I need to add to this conversation that I believe that the diagnosis of myasthenia gravis and the prescription of Mestinon was part of a clinical trial and or experiment. I cannot say whether or not my family had knowledge of the experiment and or trial, but in order to give a minor a prescription that is not approved for children, there has to be some sort of clinical study occurring to make that legal, in my opinion. I also wanted to clarify that one of the doctors that oversaw my care when I was a child is now the leading researcher of Duchenne's muscular dystrophy at the same hospital. Again, I'm going to be using the U.S. National Library of Medicine to briefly describe the rest of the medical conditions I was diagnosed with at the age of 7. CIDP is chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy. It is an immune-mediated neuropathy that typically affects muscle weakness. So what that means, or the way that it was explained to me as a child, is you had myasthenia gravis that was creating muscle weakness, but on top of that, you also had CIDP, which was worsening the condition. On top of CIDP, they diagnosed me with ataxia, and ataxia is a balance and coordination disability. It typically affects your trunk and this portion, your core of your body, and can really have significant impacts on your ability to perform coordinated movements. There are multiple types of ataxia. The most common is Friedreich's ataxia. I do know several people that suffer from Friedreich's ataxia, and it is a very debilitating medical condition that impacts their life on a regular day-to-day basis. Because ataxia is such a generalized disorder without narrowing it down to a specific type of ataxia, the doctors were able to just kind of state, well, she has these symptoms and this is what we believe is causing the symptoms. And so they tagged the balance and the lack of coordination, or tied it to ataxia. The final disorder that they gave to me at 7, so by 7 I had 4, was porphyria. And porphyria is a blood disorder, and it also causes gene mutation. There is a type of porphyria that makes you crave blood. I remember my sister teasing me about it. We watched a television show that centered around this man that had porphyria, and the way that they characterized this person living with this disorder made me fearful of my future, and the thought of me craving blood was disgusting. But again, just like with ataxia, there are 4 different types of porphyria, and acute porphyria prevents the body from converting blood into the proper form. And these medical conditions that they labeled me with gave them the ability to add additional medicine besides mestinon onto my condition. Most of what they were prescribing me were immunosuppressants. You had prednisone, 500 milligrams on Friday and Saturday. You had azathioprine, also known as Imuran, which was another immune suppressant. You had gabapentin or Lyrica, which was, they use gabapentin or Lyrica to treat fibromyalgia patients. There's also a federal class action lawsuit against that and against that type of medication. And that was a Freudian slip. And then probably the most impactful, which just based off of the information I read on the U.S. National Library of Medicine, CIDP allowed them to prescribe what was called immune globulin transfusions, or IVIG treatments. Intravenous treatments, that the goal of it was whatever remaining portion of my immune system that was left after they gave me all of the immunosuppressants was supposed to go into my body and attack or kill the rest of my immune system, which they told us was attacking and killing me. As an adult, you were supposed to get immune globulin transfusions once a year. As a minor, they worked me up to receiving them every 3 weeks. So they would pull me out of school 2 days a week, every 3 weeks, And for 6 to 8 hours, I was hooked up to an IV, and I was ingested with Zoloft, IV Benadryl, anti-nausea medicines prior to the treatment itself. And then I was blessed with the opportunity of understanding what it's like to have your entire remaining immune system replaced, which is not a painless process. All of this led to a very sick human being, a very deformed human being, a human being that was not able to eat or drink or be involved in physical movement. Suddenly, at the age of 17, a doctor walked into the room and said, "You do not have these medical conditions. You instead have something called dopa-responsive dystonia. And dopa-responsive dystonia, we are going to treat with dopamine." That was the biggest shock of my life, and it was super unexpected. However, that, again, misdiagnosis of dopa-responsive dystonia led me to ultimately be able to properly diagnose my medical condition. And to learn how I did that, you're going to have to come back for part 2. But it's going to be a couple of days, probably. I mean, the next set of videos are going to be quite, interesting. We will put it like that. They're going to be interesting. I'm not going to go into dopa-responsive dystonia right now, but I will in my part 2. You are going to see 2 videos before that. Dear Mom, part 1 and part 2, and then we will go into dopa-responsive dystonia. I promise. My name is Jenny Ray. Keep on living one step at a time. Thank you so much. See you later. Bye.